Hi, my name is Paul VanderKlay. I'm the pastor of Livingstone's Christian Reformed Church in Sacramento, California. And I've been doing videos on YouTube for about 2 years, commenting on philosophy, religion, the work of Jordan Peterson, some other intellectual thought leaders, the meaning crisis. And I'm going to do at least a few videos on the television series The Good Place. I think The Good Place was an important series for a number of reasons, and this is just going to be a brief introductory video, at least brief according to my standards, to talk about why I think this show is important. I think the series reflects contemporary status of conversations about religion and morality in the West, including the United States, Canada, Britain, and Australia, where most of my current audience is. And I think the series may be reshaping how we think about God, how we think about morality, and especially how we think about life after death. The show just had its series finale, and I've been trying to catch up. The first 3 seasons are on Netflix, at least in the United States. I watched the 4th season on demand and got all the way through it last night. In this interview on Vox, kind of the header for a podcast that they've done, a little introduction to Michael Schur, or Skur. I don't know if it's Schur or Skur. He played Mose in The Office now and then, Dwight Schrute's brother. After creating and running Parks and Recreation and writing for The Office, Michael Schur decided he wanted to create a sitcom about one of the most fundamental questions of human existence. What does it mean to be a good person? That's how The Good Place was born. Soon into the show's writing, Schur realized he was in way over his head. The question of human morality is one of the most complicated and hotly contested subjects of all time. So he needed someone to help him out. So he recruited a professor from UCLA of moral responsibility, psychology, free will, another philosopher from I forget his name right now, but he'll show up in the series, another philosopher. And so they started writing The Good Place. And The Good Place has not only been I think it's been a relatively successful show for NBC, but I've seen it pop up on my radar screen as a pastor. People who go to my church watch it. I think a lot of people watch it with a lot of spiritual and religious intent and question. There's quite a good YouTube out there, which I'll put the link in the notes below. I'll put the link to a bunch of these things in the note below, saying that The Good Place is redefining sitcoms, and I think that YouTube is correct. Sitcoms have long been used for teaching morality on American TV. The Andy Griffith Show. Father Andy always had wisdom for young Opie and for the town. That's the one thing that Andy Griffith had. He had wisdom. Father knows best. It's right there in the title. All in the Family I grew up watching, with Archie Bunker sort of as the bigoted idiot, dealing with his wife Edith, who was, well-meaning but dim, and then his radical daughter and son-in-law, Meathead, and how they dealt with issues of sexuality and race and a lot of the issues that were sort of roiling around in the 70s. All in the Family was considered an important television show, but again, it was in the sitcom fashion. Cheers in the 80s sort of left us thinking about, maybe there is a place where we can come together and find community. The Office, raised questions about political correctness and how we can all sort of be a family in the workplace. And then Parks and Rec there in the middle of America. Michael Schur had a hand in The Office and Parks and Rec. This video of taking a look at The Good Place makes the observation that now with streaming, sitcoms have a whole different range, because where in the past, pretty much with every single episode, you had to have a confined story arc and you had to wrap things up within something like 18 to 22 minutes. But now, with streaming, you can actually develop characters through the sitcom. And this has been done over the 4 seasons. And I'm actually quite happy that they they kept it at four seasons so that The Good Place wouldn't jump the shark, sort of like Happy Days did back in the 70s. Now, TV teaches in its own particular way. If TV is too preachy, people don't like it. That's one of the issues that's going on around about morality now, that a lot of people feel that others are simply too preachy, too self-righteous. And so a sitcom doesn't take itself too seriously because, of course, it's just a sitcom. But TV teaches most persuasively by offering us a cascade of images that redefine our assumptions about what is good, what is beautiful, towards what should we aspire, and how the world should work. And I think The Good Place does this quite powerfully and in some ways subtly, because while it seems to be giving us tidbits and ideas about moral philosophy like Immanuel Kant and utilitarianism, and I've seldom heard a sitcom bandy about these sorts of words, a lot of the lessons that it teaches, I think, are not taught directly, but rather indirectly. As human beings, we are very much herd creatures, and we believe in groups. We believe according to what will give us status in our group. We believe according to what we imagine will make us look good, or at least fit in with our crowd. And I think in many ways of this sitcom, with remarkably beautiful people, as is usually the case on television, that there's often sort of an implicit should behind the overt shoulds that are actually the shoulds that are shaping us and helping us to imagine, well, this is the idea that I've come up with, and this idea makes me look and feel good. I don't think the sitcom can be understood apart from what is called in religion, in sociology of religious terms, fueled to a degree by the Pew Research Center, the rise of the nuns. And what I mean by nuns are not N-U-N-S, the kinds of women who devoted themselves to ministry in the Roman Catholic Church, like I saw in the New York metropolitan area growing up in the 60s and 70s, but nuns in terms of N-O-N-E-S, people who are now declare themselves to be religiously unaffiliated. In decades past, they might have just chosen the religion that they or their parents grew up in. They were Protestant or Catholic, Presbyterian, Baptist, Jewish, so on and so forth. Now more and more people, especially in the younger demographic ranges, consider themselves without religious affiliation. They aren't necessarily members of a church or synagogue or mosque. They might consider themselves spiritual but not religious. They consider themselves very open, and they found that religion or organized religion or established religion or traditional religion is immoral because of its stickiness with traditional morality. It hasn't seemed to change and keep up with the times like they've felt the culture has done. Religion seems problematic. Religion seems too exclusive, especially in an ever-shrinking world where you go to school with people of different ethnic groups and different backgrounds. And so, for many people, religions are problematic. Now, that might seem good, but the kinds of questions that religions have always addressed sort of leave them without guidance or authority in their lives. And so what people usually look to when they find themselves in a place like this is they start looking around at, well, what are the interesting and seemingly smart and beautiful, and what kind of beliefs do I aspire to, and what kinds of practices do I want to clothe my life in? Now, what's nice about The Good Place is you're not watching a religious programming, you're not sending money to anybody, you're not making a commitment on what you're going to do on your Friday, Saturday, or Sunday, you're just watching TV. And what we find there is actually some of these answers are being addressed. One of the things that pops up in the first episode is the person Doug Forsett. You see, right away when Ellen Shellstrop sort of wakes up in the good place. Michael, who comes to her in a lovely business suit and a wonderful office, says, well, none of the religions got it right. Most of them only got it sort of 5% right. That sort of indulges our pluralistic skepticism. Because if we have all these competing religions, well, none of them can be right. So then, can any of us get it right? And then Michael mentions this character, Doug Forsett. Doug Forsett got it 92% right when he and a buddy were doing some mushrooms, and Doug just sort of laid out how he thought the universe should be. And he got it right. And that indulges our imagination that, well, maybe the Dalai Lama or the Pope or the pastor down the street or old dead men didn't get it right, but maybe I have a chance if I'm doing something spiritual, or if I think hard enough, maybe I can get the ideas right. And if you don't have a big stake in any religious tribe, you can sort of feel validated by the fact that maybe you, like Doug Forsett, thinking about it a little bit, can get it right. Now, of course, the show doesn't take itself too seriously, but underneath the surface, which is, I think, where the show really operates in terms of the deep places in which we are formed, this is where the show is really moving people and moving people's hearts and getting their imaginations thinking about, really, how are these big questions answered in life? Now, one of the things that appeared in a lot of this research about those who have given up on religion, given up on church, given up on the faith that maybe their parents or grandparents had, is that there are in fact common beliefs in this group. Many of the people believe that everything happens for a reason. A lot of the people are rather skeptical that there is a good God in charge, because if that good God were in charge, the world would make more sense. Things would be more orderly. There would be less random bad stuff, and there would be more happiness and goodness. Just how that more would look is a little fuzzy, which is, again, sort of the area in which this show will play. The one question that continues to haunt nuns, despite the fact that many will say, well, I don't know if there's a God. I don't know what is behind the universe. I'm sort of vaguely agnostic, but I don't think nothing happens when you die. As a pastor, I seldom see atheists say a lot at funerals, because it's just sort of feels like bad taste to look into the grave and say, they're done. Most people have a sense that, well, there's got to be something beyond the grave. And for people who have given up practicing or in a full way believing a traditional religion, that simply leads a lot of questions. And so many Hollywood movies tend to step in. It's a Wonderful Life, one of my favorite movies back in the 70s. Heaven Can Wait can come on. Most movies take sort of a populist general approach to the afterlife, which says, well, good people go to a good place when they die. If there's any justice in the universe, that must be what it is. And most people are good people. And so if you've tried, if you've done well, you'll go to a good place. Now, you'll even notice in the title of the show, they're avoiding religious terminology. They're not talking about it as heaven and hell. They're talking about it in generic terms, a good place and a bad place. The series is in many ways overtly secular, but underneath trying to answer religious questions that people are really dealing with. And as a pastor ministering in a fairly secular corner of the United States, these are the kinds of things I see happening in people's lives. So the idea is, well, I think good people go to a good place when they die. That certainly must be the case. And bad people get what they deserve. But when you ask people to get a little bit more specific about bad people, well, genocidal dictators, child rapists, and whoever's really annoyed me in my life. And so the good place kind of steps in and begins to offer suggestions about, well, how might this work? In many ways, I think the TV series was a perfect fit for this religious/spiritual moment with competing advocates of skepticism and pluralism, resistance to traditional religions, and a desire to sort of smooth out the rough edges of pluralism by being as vague and as universal as possible with our language. So we'll use a good place instead of heaven, and a bad place instead of hell, and good people instead of someone who perhaps pertains to one particular religious tribe or another. But beneath the surface, there's actually a lot going on in terms of religion and philosophy. The show isn't preachy, it's fun and funny. There's a lot of thought behind it. That much is clear. It's not religion, it's philosophical. And for a lot of people philosophy can be boring, but if you don't make the philosophy boring, I'll tolerate it. But I don't want any of that religious stuff, because religion just causes fights and argument and is exclusive and immoral and all of these other problem areas for which people have decided to step out of religious traditions, step out of churches, and exclude themselves until at some point usually something happens in their life, and then they're looking for a community, or they're looking for an answer, or they just want to poke around a little bit, and so they might look at a church or some other spiritual practice and try it on and see if it works for them. And what they mean by works for them means it feels right or it feels natural, so on and so forth. And again, because of the whole afterlife issue, this show directly addresses people's significant fears in a light way, which is what happens after I die. My wife and I were watching this show on demand, and so we couldn't, as we usually do, kind of zip through the commercials if we're watching something that we've recorded on our DVR, and we noticed just how many commercials were for medicine. And it kind of led us to believe that there's a lot of people watching this show who are anxious. They're anxious about their death. They're anxious about the death of loved ones. That they really wonder if someone can tell them something about, well, what does happen after we die? Can I have a degree of assurance that there is a good place, that, well, if there's just nothing, that my life has meaning? Because that's sort of the opposite take. If the grave is simply sleep, like before you were alive, then all of the decisions that you've made in this life sort of evaporate and come to nothing, which winds up being sort of a meaning crisis. And if you look at my channel, you'll find a lot of other videos about meaning and the meaning crisis, Jordan Peterson and meaning, and all the kinds of other conversations that I've been having on my channel. And if you look around my channel, you'll see that there are a lot of rambling monologues that I do about a lot of religious and philosophical things. There are a lot of conversations that I do with some experts and some normal people, but in many ways all wrestling with these kinds of questions. So the show is going to deal with people's fears, and actually without dismissing them. And I think part of the reason this show, being The Good Place, implicitly, and then later once you get into the show explicitly, deals with the bad place, is because, well, people need to talk about it. And people are very anxious about judgment after death. And as a pastor, more than once I have been with a dying person who is anxious about the family they're leaving behind, anxious about whether they've done enough in their life, anxious about what happens next. So if you want to see more, I almost seldom say this in my videos, there's a little like button, a little thumbs up button. If you click that, then the next time you go to YouTube, if you're logged into YouTube, if you don't know how to log into YouTube, you click on subscribe, and Google will walk you through some process to give you an account. So like the video and then subscribe to the channel. And there are playlists in YouTube, and in those playlists you can follow one video to another. So I am going to do, I don't know how many videos, but I'm going to do at least several videos about this series, The Good Place, because I want to use it as a way to talk about the issues that are beneath it. And if you're a regular viewer of the channel, don't worry, I'm not abandoning the path that I've been on for the last 2 years. I want to integrate this stream into the conversation. As I've thought about my channel, one of the things that the channel suffers from sometimes is that I just get too philosophical and maybe the conversations get a little too esoteric. So I think spending a little bit of time with a sitcom, which is pitched towards not just people who like to think about philosophy or theology, but people who like to think about regular life and have fears and anxieties and questions about regular life. Maybe by addressing some of these things in the good place, this will help others follow. And I hope to be able to examine some of the assumptions behind the show, but then also perhaps offer something a little bit deeper. Because I think at least the effect that the show had on me is that you watch the program and it's a sitcom, it's funny, it touches on a few things, but there's a deeper ache underneath that asks, well, okay, it was a funny show, but really, what is true? What happens after I die? Is reality really a moral meritocracy? Is someone keeping points about the good and the bad that I do? How can I know the good? What is a good person? And so I hope to use this program to address some of those issues. So again, if you're new to the channel and you've come here because of this video, like and subscribe, leave a comment. You'll find in the comment section a lot of people who've been with my channel for a couple of years, and it's sort of a little community on the channel. There's a Discord server connected to my channel. So if you're new to the channel, introduce yourself, poke around. In terms of YouTube comment section, the comment section on this channel I think is easily above average. It's generally speaking a pretty good place, and you'll find people with a lot of knowledge, a lot of diversity in terms of background. You'll find some people who have strong religious commitments. You'll find other people who are very much looking and trying to find their way between religious and philosophical questions. So leave a comment, introduce yourself, and if you'd like to have a conversation with me, you might leave a comment to that degree too, because there are links to try to find a slot to have a conversation with me. So those slots get taken up quickly. There aren't any open right now, but I'll probably be opening some up as time goes on. So thanks for watching, like and subscribe, and let me know what you think about this video and the idea of doing some videos about the TV series The Good Place.